In this update, we've got plenty of heat and record-breaking temperatures, as well as an active jet stream that's going to bring multiple days of severe weather ahead. So we're going to break it down for you day by day in this update. Let's take a look at the overall setup for today, because it's all about the heat, as that ridge of high pressure is going to be expanding over much of the Central Plains, kicking up the most intense heat so far this year, with numerous records likely unfold across much of the southern plains, getting into the central plains, as well as even to the northern plains. But you can see out west, we do have a trough, and that is going to be the beginning stages of what's to come. That's going to bring all kinds of severe weather starting off today and then moving on to different areas along with the cool front as it eventually sinks a little bit further south heading into this weekend. But for today, it is all about the heat and the record-breaking temperatures. In fact, the latest update puts us around 34 potential record highs. I think Texas topped out about 112 degrees yesterday. They'll do that and leave even a little bit higher today in some isolated areas, but all these areas that are highlighted in the circled, that is a record-breaking temperature. So we're talking not just daily records breaking. We could be seeing monthly all-time record May breaking days ahead, where Austin, San Antonio could break their all-time May record ever since they've been keeping records. But the 90s soar well into Oklahoma and Arkansas, as well as into Kansas, even as far north as the Dakotas. They've been really elevated up there. They've been seeing plenty of days in the 90s. In fact, 1 or 2 days even had some temperatures even in the low 100s. But if we overall set up to take a look at the setup on the satellite picture, we've got some Pacific moisture. That is what's actually going to keep the southwest winds in place. And as they turn westerly, that is when the downsloping winds take effect. And that is when you're really going to be spiking those temperatures, especially as that dry line inches closer into areas of Austin, San Antonio, Dallas today. But it's also going to keep the stout cap in place as well, limiting any storm activity. So most of the attention is going to be taking further to the north. That's where a little bit higher instability will likely be, as well as into the jet stream is going to be, elevating those temperatures, as well as pulling those winds and splitting them in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And as they do, that's when showers and thunderstorms are likely going to erupt in the heat of the day in areas of the Dakotas, especially down further south in Nebraska. The Storm Prediction Center has already highlighted that slight risk for severe weather all the way further north into Bismarck, down to Aberdeen, further south into Sioux Falls. But I think especially down into North Platte, into the Hastings regions, we do have an elevated tornado risk today. Very small, but if things get going, the ingredients are in place to see a tornado or two further south into Nebraska as we take it past the 4 o'clock time frame. And as we head to that 6 or 7 o'clock time frame, the radar is going to be lighting up in a big fashion across the Dakotas, further south in Nebraska. And I think that's when things are really going to be amplified as we take it past that 4 o'clock through likely about that 10 o'clock time frame. And I think things will start to die down by then. But I wouldn't rule out even a couple tornadoes, especially into northwestern Nebraska later on, late this afternoon into the early evening, with this low pressure continuing to dig and continuing to strengthen as we head into that Thursday time frame. Look how tight it is, folks. That's a 982. That's a pretty significant low pressure with those tight isobars. Those winds are likely going to be cranking. And as we get a little bit closer into the heat of the afternoon, this is also going to be another daytime heating event. Things likely will explode over cross portions of northern Minnesota, but especially there into Wisconsin. Supercell thunderstorms will likely erupt on the southeastern side of that low pressure center. And that's exactly where the Storm Prediction Center has upped the ante with that expanded, enhanced risk for those areas across Minneapolis, down to La Crosse, getting into the Green Bay region. It does include Chicago as well as into Grand Rapids. We'll take a look at some of the latest high resolution guidance, because even this could have shifted even a little bit further off to the east and south. But we'll be watching the southern flank of the storm as well. We've got two pieces of energy, the northern flank as well as the southern flank, and the southern flank is the one I think will likely outperform based on the forecast, what we're seeing right now. And I think the Storm Prediction Center will likely have to catch up, if you will. But right now we do have a pretty wide swath of that 5% risk of tornadic activity as all the way into that enhanced risk, and then pushing further south into St. Louis, back into the Paducah region. It would include Indianapolis as well as into Louisville. And I think if anything, this gets expanded and pushed further south as we head deeper into the day on Thursday. And there is the overall setup. So once this cool front, this cooler air mass comes in out west, that's going to eat away any ridging and any higher temperatures you're going to be seeing. That's going to be a distant memory for those folks in Minneapolis, back into Wisconsin, and what you're going to be seeing today. A pretty significant cool down is going to be on the table, but that also pushes the severe threat further south, especially as we head into Friday, especially for those areas down towards southern Illinois, getting into Tennessee, and unfortunately Kentucky again seems to be a favorite area of all three modes of severe storms. And here's the latest update from some of the high resolution guidance. This just now came into range. And yeah, pretty significant difference, right? So we have the southern flank here. This is the Nebraska impact later on this afternoon, getting into the early evening time frame with these helicity tracks pretty tight-nipped. So that means the atmosphere will be rotating big time across that region, as well as you pull further north into Minneapolis and likely under that enhanced risk. But notice the difference further south back into Illinois and much of Indiana and Ohio. It has a little bit of a lull going on with the latest update, and then it pushes the helicity tracks, really amplifies them over Kentucky again. So we might be seeing a little bit of a difference in what the Storm Prediction Center has and what some of the short range guidances has, going forward. And if anything, this does in fact, at least the southern branch looks to overperform based on the guidances right now, and they'll have to upgrade that risk further south back into Kentucky. Whereas right now we do have that slight risk in place for those areas into Kentucky. Much of Tennessee as well as into Arkansas does include the Memphis, Tennessee region and the Little Rock region as well. Further south back into Texas, you will be still fighting that capping inversion of more of a stouter cap continuing to be in place for those areas across Texas. But right now, this is the the CSU guidance, and kind of hints at, again, this is ever evolving as this continues to shift at least a little bit further south. So even this looks to be a little bit too far north in what we're seeing in some of the latest short range guidance. But nonetheless, definitely be on high alert for all three modes of severe storms. If you got the northern flank, and then I think the southern flank will be the likely one of the stronger of the two as we head into that Friday time frame across Kentucky as well as into Tennessee, and that does push further south into Arkansas and northern areas of Mississippi. So here's the latest guidance on the overall 48-hour radar depiction, and where you see the deeper, darker reds, that's where the weaker cap will be and allow for numerous showers and thunderstorms, and likely the severe storms heading into the Nebraska region, back into the Dakotas, pushes up to Minneapolis, fishtails further south into Wisconsin, towards Michigan. But look what happens. You kind of get that little bit of a lull for those areas across Illinois even Indiana and even portions of Ohio, but it's the further south as well. Some of the deeper, darker reds are starting to come to fruition down here into Kentucky, further south into Tennessee. It's getting a little bit out of range by then because it only goes out 48 hours. But look what happens, right? That's that stout capping inversion that will likely be in place for these areas across the South, at least through Friday. But I think that changes on Saturday, especially with this disturbance that's been kind of hanging out west. That's going to get a little bit closer. So the combination of this dry line that sets up across West Texas that will propagate east into Dallas and those areas across into the Saturday afternoon, this disturbance will be the second piece, and that's the piece of energy that will likely weaken the Capit inversion and allow showers and thunderstorms, because here is some of the latest guidance from the NAM model and kind of hinting at that weaker cap in place as we get past the morning hours heading into the afternoon. So that might be the culprit of showers and thunderstorms that likely turn severe. And based on some of the overall weather guidance, we could be looking at some bigger hail producers as well. Some of some of these soundings that I was taking yesterday kind of hinted at some of the bigger hail could likely unfold, mainly a big hail and wind threat, not really a tornado threat, at least for that Saturday time frame. So if anything, the Storm Prediction Center will likely push more of a marginal to a slight risk in towards North Texas, maybe even as far, getting into tomorrow for that Saturday time frame, because all indications do in fact have that weaker cap in place. And by the latest European guidance, especially after that 4 o'clock, we should be looking at showers and thunderstorms erupting off the dry line with the disturbance coming in from the west. That's going to allow supercell thunderstorms likely to unfold and be some larger, if not some very large hail producers, about 30 to 40% coverage across that region. So I think things light up across the board into North Texas, southern portions of Oklahoma, and getting into areas of, southern areas of Arkansas. We'll have some light to moderate showers across the Northeast. And I think things just continues going into Sunday. So we'll still be watching the dry line. And again, right now, the Storm Prediction Center has already highlighted a slight risk across areas of Oklahoma City, Lawton, back into Enid. That's through Sunday. This will likely be expanded as we get closer. And then, of course, going into Monday as well, has that elevated increased risk already this far out across Kansas and much of Oklahoma, as the pattern continues to remain active almost on a daily basis, fighting with early heat and also a more active jet stream as things look active as we head into that second half of May. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch the next update. Wire protect you before and after storm.